I'm Josh Ockman with Park Industries Customer Service Department. On this video, we are going to show you how to correct high pressure leaks, and we're going to go through multiple points on the machine to show you the different scenarios of where it can leak and how to correct them leaks. On this particular video, we are on a Javelin with the 350 pump, but the same thing goes for any Saberjets, Fusions, anything like that with the high pressure connections. It's the same concept, whether it's the 350 pump, the 30 horse Saberjet, or the 50 horsepower Fusion or Saberjet. So we're going to start by the Intensifier here. For this scenario, if you would have a leak coming out of the weep hole right here, that would mean you have an issue with your high pressure connection, how your high pressure line is seated in there. So we're gonna crack this nut loose. Now make sure before you start, your high pressure, your gauge is down at 0. There's no built up high pressure. Make sure everything is de-energized. Use your proper lockout takeout procedures here. I also always start with cracking the line just a very bit slowly to make sure I'm not getting any leaking coming out and making sure everything is de-energized. So on this scenario, this line is very short, so we are going to disconnect both sides. And what I'm doing here with my adjustable wrench is just holding that fitting, and I'm slowly cracking the nut loose. You can see some water coming out. It's just the built up water draining from here. So that's what you'd see if you did not have a good connection. You would see water coming out of the weep hole. So I started feeling some tension on that top nut. So I'm going to loosen this bottom nut to keep this line even because there is built up pressure on the line from it binding up. Okay, so if you do have the high pressure leak, there's multiple things you want to look at. A majority of the time, especially on new machines or new installs of the high pressure line, it will start to leak after a little bit of time. With that 60,000 PSI jolting through that line, they can become loose. So we'll just pull our gland back here. And what you're looking for is that you want to see 3 threads exposed between the collar and where the taper starts on the high pressure line. You also do want to inspect for damage, making sure on that taper you don't see any nicks, scars, any impressions. That should be 100% smooth. If it is not, you are going to want to replace that high pressure line because that damage can transfer to your joint there, whatever one you are going into at that time. So inspect that line. You're also going to want to inspect the taper inside there for any damage. On here also you can see that we do not have any blue goop on the actual taper there. If you are going to have some, very, very, very little. But usually we'll keep them dry, just keep it on the threads. The blue goop is an anti-seize for the stainless steel, so it does not seize up on the parts that have to actually move here. So once we have that collar set and everything, we can put that back on. Sometimes with shorter lines, there is a little pressure there, so you can see I'm going back and forth to get everything lined up correctly here. I like to thread that on as far as I can by hand to make sure everything is lining up. and then I don't get anything cross-threaded there. Also on here, if you do have a leak on the attenuator, this one's underneath the Intensifier on the 350. If you have a different style Intensifier, it may be up top on the back. But there's a weep hole on this back side. It's pretty hard to get a camera view there, but there's a weep hole about 3/4 of an inch in, and then one right before this line here, before this crack. If you have on here, if you have it coming out of that weep hole that's within an inch in from the end there, then it's your high pressure line needs to be reseated or replaced there. Also make sure you're checking your taper inside there. It is just that you need to replace that if it is on the outer one. If it is on the inner one, then there's internal damage to the seals on the attenuator, and your attenuator needs to be replaced. These are non-serviceable. We don't have seal kits or anything, just because of the sheer velocity of how much pressure it's holding. It's a safety aspect there. So once you get them lines in, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna discard my wrench, and for 3/8 lines, it is a 13/16 wrench that you'd be using. But here, you can attempt to seat this yourself with the wrench. I do prefer using a crow's foot on a torque wrench. For 3/8 lines, your torque is 40 foot-pounds. If you are on a 1/4 inch line, it is 20 foot-pounds. We're just gonna make sure we hold our adapter tight. Make sure my adjustable wrench is snug so I don't strip it out. And then we are just going to hold that straight and torque to our proper spec there, our 40 foot-pounds in this case, because this is a 3/8 line. All Intensifiers, you will have 3/8 lines around the Intensifier and up to the machine. Once it starts going through the track on the machine, that's when it will switch to 1/4 inch lines. And depending on which machine, you might have some 3/8 mixed in there, but any tracks or anything will have the 1/4 inch. Okay, on this part of the video, we are going to be reseating the high pressure lines at a block. So whether it's a block, 90-degree block like this, or might be a union like the one down on the floor here, right here, it's the same concept, and it's the same as previous in the video here. So there's 2 weep holes on that block. So whichever weep hole it's leaking by. So if it was leaking out of this weep hole here, you would have an issue with this connection down here. If it's leaking out of the one up here, it's our issue here. Same thing at the union down there. Whichever side it's leaking on, that's where your issue lies. So we're just gonna hold our block tight. Loosen up our gland fully here. A little bit more. Okay, so on here, same concept. We're looking for our 3 threads exposed in between this collar and where the taper starts. We're also making sure our taper looks good. You may see, like on this one, we do see a little ring going around. That ring is fine as long as it's perfectly centered on there. That's just the impression from when it was pushed into the taper on the female side, on the block side here. So if that ring looks offset, then that line was tightened up in there crooked, and you're gonna struggle to seal that off. So you are gonna wanna replace that line for sure. And you're also really gonna wanna look at the taper inside the block here to making sure that there's no ring in there, and your female side of your taper looks Nice. So then to tighten that up, now here you can see I'm turned on my line just a little bit. So it's not quite straight. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen up this bottom so I can pivot that a little bit. Now I can pivot that a little bit. And thread my gland back on here. Hand tight again as far as you can. And then we're gonna torque these. So this is a 3/8 line also. So torque specs on the 3/8, 40 foot-pounds. 1/4 inch is 20 foot-pounds. Line on here. Make sure you're holding your block steady whichever way you're turning on. And that's how you reseat the high pressure lines on a block or a coupler there. Okay, now we're gonna take a look at leaks on the cutting head here. So if you have a leak on the weep hole on your adapter here, that is gonna be that the high pressure line is not made it into that adapter good. Leak at the weep hole at the top, that's going to be that your on-off valve, your needle and seat inside the valve body, is not sealing off and leaking up and through that. If you have a leak from the like around the aluminum block, around the valve body here, at the top or at the bottom or everywhere, then it's going to be an issue with your bullet that this adapter is pushing in to the valve body is not seated off correctly. So we're going to pull this apart quick and just show you how to seat all that. This is done in Javelin here once again, and this does have the high pressure line holder. That make sure you loosen up that before you start on anything so you're not putting torque on the unnecessary torque on the high pressure line. So just get that so that's completely loose or off. We'll get it out of our way here. So that was a 1/2 inch wrench for that. We're going to use a 5/8 on this gland and a 13/16 on this adapter. Make sure you don't have dust and everything falling all over, getting in your threads on your gland if you do plan on reusing this gland. And it's also good to keep it out of your high pressure system completely. Okay, so we have the leak from this weep hole on the adapter. Once again, we're looking that we have the 3 threads exposed between the taper. We actually need to come in a little bit here. Between the taper and the collar itself here, making sure that this collar looks like it's in good condition. We will have to get a rag here, clean some of this up. There's a lot of debris on this one. We're gonna keep going on this, and we'll show you that in a second here to reseat that. We're gonna do, also make sure that the taper inside the adapter looks good for your high pressure line. If you do have to go further, we're going to crack loose the adapter. Now be careful here, because that bullet's in there. We don't want to drop that bullet down into our tank, especially if you're reusing it. Okay, now this cutting head will drop just ever so slightly. So this is our adapter, this is our bullet in here. Now it is a snug fit. I'm trying to be very careful not to drop it. So this is your bullet. Inside your bullet, we have a thimble filter. And that thimble filter is to catch the debris. You can run it on a diamond or ruby orifice. It's just to save on the orifice. We do recommend, if you are running a diamond orifice, that you do have the thimble filter in. Just going to give this a little tap here to so that is the thimble filter. You can see we are going to do, I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but I can see some debris buildup inside that thimble filter. So I am going to get a little brake cleaner and try spraying that out and see if we can keep using that thimble filter here. So we're just going to pause the video for 1 second while we clean that out, and then we will show you how to reassemble all this. Okay, now that we got our thimble filter all cleaned out here, we're going to slide that back into our bullet. I wipe my bullet off nice and clean. We're going to just slide our adapter down onto our bullet. And then we're going to thread our adapter into our aluminum block and push our bullet into the valve body. So now when you do this, you want to make sure your valve body is lined up nice and center. You will have to move your whole cutting head assembly here up and down and side to side, and making sure that it's completely centered here. So you're just feeling around, making sure that that bullet is going into the female side of that taper on the valve body perfectly centered. If that is twisted, your assembly's twisted a little bit, and you push that bullet in crooked, you will not get a seal off of that. And also make sure you have the blue goop onto the adapter. So once I'm very confident that that is completely centered, I'm going to just take a wrench and keep moving that around if able to. Should be pretty tight by now that you can't really move it. And I'm just going to put a wrench on just to snug it a little bit more. You want to make sure that is nice and centered there. And I just lightly snugged it, and then we can take a torque wrench put it on that adapter. Now this would be the same poundage as a 3/8 line, so your 40 foot-pounds. Some people do snug them a little snugger than that. There we go, that clicked. We should be good there. So now we're gonna seat in our high pressure line. Once again, making sure our taper inside there looks good. The line itself here, looking at our taper once again, making sure our taper looks fine, making sure we have 3 threads from our taper to our collar here. And some of these you gotta make sure you pull that shielding back so that you can turn it. And remember, on these collars, they are reverse threads. So we're going to seat our high pressure line in. And same thing, trying to make sure it stays nice and centered. Blue goop on our gland. Going to use a wrench just to barely snug it up here. And then I will use a torque wrench to check my torque on this also. This one is a 5/8. We're going to make sure we put a wrench on our adapter to hold that. Would definitely be easier with 2 people here. One to help you hold, one to torque. If you do need help. Then we'll just put our bracket back on to hold our high pressure line. Just snug that up then. Okay. So now we're all back assembled and we can go to our screen, start up our jet pump on the manual mode, go to our pump screen to do that. And we're going to check for high pressure leaks and make sure all of our stuff is good. If it's not, then go back and recorrect anything or possibly replace parts if you do still have some leaks and you cannot get that leak to go away. As always, give our customer service department a call if you have any questions about it, and thank you.